Hi. I'm guessing if you're watching this video, then a friend of yours, or maybe someone you just ran into at your local game store, told you about this great drafting game they'd played. Or maybe they suggested that you play a great drafting game they thought you'd like. You're nodding along all the while wondering what in the world is drafting. Well, I'm Casey from Average Meeple, and today I'm going to give you an average explanation of drafting so you can finally understand what it is and we can see it in action. So first off, what is drafting? You may be surprised to find out that you're already familiar with the concept. Drafting in board games is very similar to drafting in sports. But think the NFL draft, not so much car racing. Or think to when you were a kid on the playground and two captains were choosing teams. Each captain took turns selecting a player from an available pool of players. Each player selected was removed from that pool, and this continued until both teams were full. Drafting in board games is very similar to this. Players are presented with a number of options. You're then asked to choose a predetermined number of those options, and that's typically one. And then, after you've made your selection, pass the remaining options to another player. That's done by either physically passing those to the other player, or by just switching which player is actively choosing. This continues until a pre-designated end of that phase, or when you're just simply out of options. But instead of me trying to talk through it, let's take a look at some board games together and see it in action. The first one I want to look at is 7 Wonders. This is your classic card drafting game. Next, we'll look at Cascadia. Cascadia is a tile drafting and kind of a combo drafting game. And then last, we'll look at Mechs versus Minions. Now, Mechs versus Minions is primarily a cooperative programming game, but there's drafting in between each round. Let's start with 7 Wonders. And this is probably one of the first examples most board gamers will give when asked about drafting games. In 7 Wonders, each player is dealt 7 cards. Players look at their hands privately, choose one of those cards, then pass the remaining cards to an adjacent player. Once all players have chosen, cards are revealed and resolved. Then play continues until no cards are left. This is a straightforward version of drafting and is found in games like Sushi Go or Blood Rage. Next, let's take a look at Cascadia. Cascadia is a little different. Instead of cards, players draft tiles and tokens. Another difference is that all of the currently available options are visible to all players. Players take turns selecting a combination of environment tiles and animal tokens. They then place these into their own personal environment, a new tile and token are drawn to replace them, and the next player does the same. Play continues this way until there are no tiles left in the draw piles. Cascadia introduces some twists where players may use a special resource to select non-paired combinations. Finally, let's talk about Mechs vs. Minions. Mechs vs. Minions is not a pure drafting game like the other two examples, like I said before. It's primarily a programming game where players place abilities that are resolved one at a time in a predetermined order. The drafting happens between rounds, and this is how players build their programming line. Between each round, a set number of ability cards are dealt face up onto the table so all players can view them. Players then take turns selecting cards until a specified number have been taken. The catch here is that all players are working together, and the drafting phase is timed. If players take too long, the remaining cards are shuffled and then dealt out at random. This is more similar to the playground example from the beginning, except here, everyone's on the same team. While these aren't the only drafting games out there, they should provide you a pretty solid foundation to the concept. Drafting's a pretty straightforward mechanic with limitless wrinkles, and is extremely enjoyable when implemented properly. Drafting is also one of my personal favorite mechanics in board games, so don't let any mechanic scare you away from the table. Thanks for watching this average explanation of drafting. I hope it gives you a clearer picture of what drafting is and will help you identify it in games in the future. If you enjoyed this video or are new to the world of board gaming, please check out our other content on YouTube or over on our website, averagemeeple.com, and consider subscribing to stay informed of any new content. Again, I'm Casey. Have fun and keep gaming.